Folks, let me
No,
tell you,
Mr. Ex-President, it's not truth.
And I swear to God, it felt like the ghost of history were whispering a warning in my ear. A chill ran down my spine, not from the autumn air, but from something far more chilling. It's about Ukraine, folks. It's about the very soul of what we stand for as a nation, what we believe in, what we fought for, generation after generation. It's about a proposed peace plan that isn't a peace plan at all, but a betrayal, a capitulation, a surrender cloaked in false promises that would make every veteran who ever shed blood for freedom weep. We're talking about a proposal that would hand Vladimir Putin, a man who has shown time and again he respects no boundaries, no agreements, no human dignity, exactly what he wants. A plan that tells a sovereign nation, a brave people fighting for their very existence, that they must shrink their army, give up their land, and abandon their right to choose their own alliances. And why? So one man, Donald Trump, can claim a victory he didn't earn, a peace that won't last, and a narrative that serves only his own ego. This isn't just about Ukraine. It's about the future of global stability, about whether America stands by its word, about whether democracy itself has a fighting chance against autocracy. And the stakes, folks, they couldn't be higher. We're at a crossroads, and the choice we make now will echo for decades to come. I watched the news today, and it's clear as a bell what's happening. The reports are coming in loud and clear about a so-called peace plan being pushed onto Ukraine by Donald Trump and his team. This isn't some backroom whisper, folks. It's leaked information confirmed by multiple officials that outlines a 28-point proposal. And let me tell you, the details are galling. They are, quite frankly, an affront to everything we believe in. The core of this plan, from what's been reported, demands that Ukraine make devastating concessions. We're talking about ceding territory to Russia that Moscow has conquered militarily, and even some it hasn't. A significant reduction of Ukraine's army size is on the table, folks. And perhaps most egregious of all, Ukraine would be barred from joining NATO, essentially stripping them of the right to choose their own defensive alliances. This is an ultimatum, pure and simple. Agree to these terms by Thanksgiving, or lose crucial United States support. Now, President Volodymyr Zelensky, a courageous leader if there ever was one, he responded to this, and his words, they cut right to the bone. He said Ukraine is facing, quote, one of the most difficult moments in our history, and may have to choose between, quote, the loss of our dignity or the risk of losing a key partner, meaning us, the United States of America. Think about that for a second. The leader of a nation under brutal assault, a nation fighting for its very survival, being forced to choose between his dignity and its most important ally. It's unconscionable. It doesn't serve our interest. It doesn't serve our allies' interest. And it certainly doesn't serve the cause of peace. It only serves the ambitions of Vladimir Putin and the political agenda of Donald Trump. Folks, if you believe, as I do, that America stands for something bigger than this, that we stand for freedom and democracy, then do me a favor. Hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel. Let's make sure our voices are heard, because what's happening now, it's too important to be silent. Now let's talk history, folks, because history, it doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. And the echoes I'm hearing right now, they're chillingly familiar. This isn't the first time the world has seen a powerful aggressor try to redraw maps and subjugate a sovereign nation, only to be met with calls for peace that amount to appeasement. Think back to 1994, to the Budapest Memorandum. Ukraine, a young nation, had inherited the world's third largest nuclear arsenal after the collapse of the Soviet Union. They made a monumental decision, a courageous choice for global security. They agreed to give up those nuclear weapons. In exchange, Russia, the United Kingdom, and the United States, we all signed this memorandum, pledging security assurances. We promised to respect Ukraine's independence, its sovereignty, and its existing borders. We promised not to use force or economic coercion against them. It was a big deal, a foundational moment for post-Cold War stability. And what happened? In 2014, Vladimir Putin, he shredded that agreement. He marched into Crimea, annexed it, a blatant violation of international law and the very assurances Russia itself had given. Then came the proxy war in Donbass, fueling separatists, sending in his own forces, destabilizing eastern Ukraine. In response to that aggression, there were the Minsk agreements, Minsk I in 2014 and Minsk II in 2015. These were attempts brokered by France and Germany with the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe to establish ceasefires and a roadmap for peace in the Donbass region. But Russia, it played a cynical game. They claimed they weren't a party to the conflict, even while their forces were on Ukrainian soil. The agreements had fundamental flaws. They call for elections in Russian-controlled areas before Ukraine regained control of its borders, making free and fair elections impossible. They effectively gave Russia a say in Ukraine's internal affairs, undermining its sovereignty. And what was the result? The fighting never truly stopped. Russia violated the ceasefires repeatedly. The Minsk agreements, they failed to bring lasting peace. They were, as some experts have noted, flawed by design, allowing Russia to maintain leverage and continue its aggression. So when I hear about this new quote-unquote peace plan that demands Ukraine cede territory, cap its military, and be barred from NATO, I see a pattern, folks. I see a repeat of history, but this time with even higher stakes. This isn't about peace. It's about legitimizing conquest. It's about weakening Ukraine so that Russia can, as the source material rightly points out, invade a now weaker Ukraine in a few months or a few years. It's about giving Vladimir Putin a blank check for future aggression. And let's be clear about NATO. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, formed in 1949, is the most successful defensive alliance in the history of the world. Its core principle, Article 5, states that an attack against one member is an attack against all. It's a sacred commitment. It has only been invoked once, after the September 11th terrorist attacks on the United States. NATO isn't an offensive alliance. It's a defensive one, designed to deter aggression and protect its members. Forcing Ukraine to forego NATO membership isn't about peace. It's about leaving them vulnerable. It's about removing the ultimate deterrent against future Russian invasions. It's about allowing Vladimir Putin to dictate the security architecture of Europe. And that, my friends, is a dangerous, dangerous road to go down. Now, let's peel back another layer of this onion, folks, because the hidden truth here, the real scam that Donald Trump is trying to pull, it's as plain as the nose on your face. This isn't the peace plan. It's a blueprint for future conflict, designed to serve one man's political ambitions and one dictator's expansionist dreams. When a proposal demands that Ukraine cede territory to Russia, it's not a step towards peace, it's a reward for aggression. It tells every would-be autocrat around the globe that if you invade a sovereign nation, if you inflict unimaginable suffering, if you commit war crimes, you might just get to keep what you stole. That's not how the international order works, or at least that's not how it's supposed to work. It undermines every principle of national sovereignty and territorial integrity that we as a nation have championed for decades. It sets a dangerous precedent, not just for Europe, but for every region of the world where stronger nations might eye their weaker neighbors. Then there's this idea of capping Ukraine's military size. Think about that for a second. A country that has been invaded, a country still fighting for its life, being told it can only have a certain number of soldiers, a certain amount of weaponry. Why? As the source material correctly asks, what would those two things serve? The only thing I can think of is it would make it easier for them to invade more later. Exactly right. It's not about de-escalation. It's about disarming a victim, making them ripe for the next attack. It's like telling someone who's just been mugged to give up their self-defense training because the mugger promised he wouldn't come back. We know how Vladimir Putin keeps his promises when it comes to Ukraine. He violated the Budapest Memorandum, he violated the Minsk agreements, and he would violate any quote-unquote peace plan that leaves Ukraine vulnerable. And the notion of weak, quote, security guarantees for Ukraine? Folks, after what happened with the Budapest Memorandum, after Russia's annexation of Crimea and its full-scale invasion, a piece of paper isn't enough. A security guarantee needs teeth. It needs an enforceable mechanism like the collective defense enshrined in NATO's Article 5. Without that, without a real commitment from allies to come to Ukraine's aid, if it's attacked again, it's just words on paper. It's a trap, plain and simple, designed to lull Ukraine into a false sense of security before the next inevitable Russian aggression. This isn't just a betrayal of Ukraine, folks. It's a betrayal of American values. We stand for democracy, for the right of nations to self-determination, for the idea that might doesn't make right. This plan, it spits in the face of all of that. It rewards the aggressor, punishes the victim, and undermines the global order we've worked so hard to build and maintain since World War II. And let's not forget the economic impact here at home. When global stability is threatened, when a major grain producer like Ukraine is destabilized, when energy markets are thrown into chaos by Russian aggression, who pays the price? You do, folks. American families paying more at the gas pump, more at the grocery store. The war in Ukraine has created significant disruptions in global trade flows, particularly for commodities like wheat, oil, and natural gas. Ukraine and Russia are key players in these markets, and the conflict has led to price spikes and inflationary pressures worldwide. Our support for Ukraine isn't just about moral imperative. It's about protecting our own economic security and the well-being of the middle class right here in America. It's about ensuring that we don't allow a spiraling Russia to regain its energy and power, as the source material warns, which would only enable further economic leverage against us and our allies. And the idea that Donald Trump is, quote unquote, using every single tool in Trump's toolbox to force Russia, as the source implies he should be doing, but isn't? My friends, it's a fantasy. Donald Trump has a track record of being susceptible to Vladimir Putin's word, of praising autocrats, and of undermining our alliances. We've seen it over and over again. To think he would suddenly pivot to force Russia to concede on, quote, irrational demands is to ignore everything we know about him. This plan, as leaked, is slanted towards Russia because it reflects the demands of Moscow, not the interest of Kyiv or Washington. Indeed, Secretary of State Marco Rubio himself initially called it a, quote, Russian wish list, before backtracking and claiming it was U.S. authored, but, quote, based on input from the Russian side. You don't need to be a genius to see through that. Let's be very clear about who is pushing this and why. The reports explicitly state that this 28-point, quote-unquote, peace plan was drafted by Donald Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, with his Russian counterpart, Kirill Dmitriev. That's right, folks, a direct collaboration with a Russian envoy, and it was presented to President Volodymyr Zelensky by U.S. Army Secretary Daniel Driscoll. The White House, under Donald Trump, is reportedly pressuring Ukraine to sign this deal by Thanksgiving or face a cutoff of U.S. support. This is not some abstract policy debate. This is about real people, real lives, and a real betrayal. Donald Trump's approach here is not one of a statesman seeking a just and lasting peace. It's the approach of a man who prioritizes his own perceived political wins over the fundamental principles of international law, over the sovereignty of a democratic nation, and over the stability of the global order. He's willing to sacrifice Ukraine's dignity and its future for a headline, for a moment to say he ended the war, even if that end is just a prelude to further Russian aggression. And let's look at the broader implications of Donald Trump's rhetoric and actions regarding NATO. He has for years publicly questioned the value of the alliance, threatened to pull the United States out of it, and criticized allies for not spending enough on defense. While it's true that allies need to meet their commitments, undermining the very foundation of the alliance by suggesting the U.S. might not uphold Article 5, or by promoting a plan that explicitly bars a nation like Ukraine from joining, sends a dangerous message. It emboldens adversaries like Vladimir Putin, who has long sought to weaken NATO and divide the West. When President Zelensky talks about the risk of losing a key partner, he's not just talking about military aid. He's talking about the erosion of trust, the breakdown of alliances, and the abandonment of shared democratic values that Donald Trump's policies represent. We've seen this movie before, folks. We've seen leaders who believe they can make deals with dictators only to find themselves outmaneuvered and their nations less secure. Vladimir Putin is a man who understands power, and he understands weakness. When he sees a leader willing to sacrifice an ally, to reward aggression, to disregard international norms, he sees an opportunity. And that opportunity, my friends, will not be contained to Eastern Europe. It will reverberate across the globe, encouraging other authoritarian regimes to test the boundaries, to challenge democracies, and to destabilize regions. This isn't just about Ukraine's borders. It's about the borders of democracy itself. It's about whether we, the United States of America, will stand as a beacon of freedom and a reliable partner to our allies, or whether we will retreat, betray our values, and leave the world a more dangerous, unstable place. Donald Trump's actions and his proposed peace plan are a direct challenge to the very idea of American leadership and to the security and prosperity of the American people. So, let me be absolutely clear, folks. This is not just some foreign policy debate for the elites in Washington. This is about the fundamental principles that define us as a nation. This proposed peace plan is a capitulation, not a solution. It's a betrayal of Ukraine's bravery, a green light for Vladimir Putin's aggression, and a dangerous erosion of America's standing in the world. We cannot and we will not stand by and watch a sovereign nation be dismantled, its people subjugated, and its future dictated by an aggressor. We cannot allow history to repeat itself, where appeasement only emboldens tyrants. President Volodymyr Zelensky's words about choosing between dignity and losing a key partner should echo in the halls of power, and more importantly, in the hearts of every American. Our commitment to Ukraine, our support for its democracy, it's not charity. It's an investment in our own security, in global stability, and in the values that make America, America. When we stand with Ukraine, we stand for the right of every nation to choose its own path, free from coercion and aggression. When we defend democracy abroad, we strengthen it at home. We must reject this false peace that only rewards aggression and paves the way for future conflict. We must reaffirm our unwavering support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. We must stand shoulder to shoulder with our allies, upholding the principles of international law and deterring those who seek to undermine them. This is a moment of truth, folks. The choice is clear. We can choose dignity, freedom, and a more secure world, or we can choose capitulation, chaos, and a future dictated by autocrats. I know which choice I'm going to make, and I believe the American people, when they understand the stakes, will make the same. God bless you, and may God protect our troops.